Well, ever since several reports and comments being made about which states owe what to their workers, but then you also have lots of press releases, statements making the rounds as well about their own situation. For instance, in Ogun State, they also responded to some of the reports saying that they are one of the states owing. There's a statement credited to Taiwo Adeoluwa, who is the secretary to the state government. He says in that statement that they hereby state without any equivocation that since inception of this administration to date, Ogun State does not owe its workers. They say they are one of the states that don't owe salaries. They should see those slides, but they're not popping up right at the moment. So Imo State also did release a press statement saying that they fought in the claim, saying that they owe salaries. Well, that's the statement from Ogun State now. To Imo State, they say no, that the Imo State government only owes a civil servant's May salary, and the payment for that month is at the verge of being made. And they decided to go public since there were reports saying that they owe about 11 months, and they have clearly said that is not in any way true. And who knows if subsequently other states will speak up, since the reports about some say 18 states, others think it's more than 18 states. But that's our focus this morning, and we're joined now by Dr. Ikenna Nwosu, who is a facilitator at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He's an investment lawyer, development economist as well. Morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
This is a big challenge that we're facing at the moment. But the thing is, I mean, we had governors meeting about this, digging up different things, but we also had Osun State government. And look, this is the challenge that the country is facing, and they've got to go through this. He says, at the moment, from the way things are, they're helpless. But we don't have a Minister of Finance or coordinating minister to tell us whether or not the country is broke, as many always like to ask. What's your assessment of all of this?
In 2 words, complicated uncertainty. Okay. That's the reality. The APC government said they will hit the ground running when they come into power. For a number of complex reasons, they haven't set up their cabinets after the National Assembly was promulgated. Because when a government, whether at federal, state, or local level, is hit with a debt crisis like this, which is technically looming bankruptcy, you need experts to advise you, including your cabinet. So in the absence of a chief economic advisor, in the absence of a minister of finance, how are you going to get the best? The permanent secretaries are there, yes. The president has been liaising with them. They are the civil service. But then the rest of the world is waiting to see. The IMF is not going to want to be talking to just your permanent secretaries. They want to be speaking to your minister of finance. A lot of final investment decisions are waiting to know who are the technical people that will be in government. In as much as everybody is happy that there's a smooth transition to democracy for the past 16 years. Now, all tiers of government, technically, are in the red. Federal, state, local, legislative, executive,
because
and judiciary.
They also say that they are broke and they're borrowing to pay salaries.
If what I read in The Guardian this morning is correct, even the 7th Assembly that has just disengaged, they've not finished paying their emoluments. Talk less of the 8th Assembly. So where do we stand? The reports I read said, the fact sheet, about 18 states technically are bankrupt, are not able to pay salaries for a number of different reasons. Secondly, when the Governors Forum met last night, they focused on about 3 or 4 issues. 1, inability to pay salaries. 2, the excess crude accounts. 3, the revenue leakages that need to be plugged, including oil thefts.
That allegation about the missing unaccounted $20 billion?
Well, I don't know about that. I'm talking about the oil theft at the production points in the Niger Delta, the declining value of the Naira, the fall in oil prices, which has almost halved our revenue at the federal level. Oil accounts for about 85 to 90% of revenues. The ISPOs, that's all state governments have signed, irrevocable standing payment orders for contractors. All these have a first-line charge on their accounts.
How can they hit the ground running with all of this?
The Federation Accounts Allocation Committee has failed to meet. Now, if you check back, take a step back and ask, how did we get to this point? The former Minister of Finance, who just left office, Konjo Iweala, had almost screamed herself hoarse and practically became an enemy of the governors when she said, save your ECA, your excess crude account, for the rainy day. And the governor said, no, share the money now. We have things we needed to do. That happened. The crude oil, excess crude oil fund of $20 billion, now it's $2.45 billion at the end of last year, if my information is right. Now, the workers are not paid. In a number of states, there are strikes. It's affecting public utilities. It's affecting infrastructure development. It's affecting social development. Because the teachers go on strike, no school. Hospitals go on strike, the workers, nothing's happening.
Have been on strike, as a matter of fact.
So, we are not just at the point where, it's better to paint the picture before you come to the solutions, so we get a better understanding. You are not getting to the point where the government, the country may come to a standstill. You are not able to pay external creditors that the state governments borrowed from. What does that do to your external risk rating? There will be a downgrade eventually if you're not careful.
So they won't deal with those states individually. They look at them collectively as what? From
the federal government guarantees every loan, external loan of state governments. That's a big, big responsibility. Now, the local loans of the banks, the Ministry of Finance, the immediate past Minister of Finance, the minister gave instruction, don't give any further loans to state government without our clearance. Now, even on the flip side, you look at it, everybody's talking about the states are not paying salaries. Today, the National Assembly is broke. That's the breaking news. Nobody's remembering what's happening at the local government level, which touches the masses more directly. By the time Algon, if they are set up properly, come out to say, we too are broke, then the reality dawns on everybody.
No, but I mean, I think it's taken for granted if we're still operating, the states are operating a joint account with the local government. It's taken for granted that if the states are broke,
so just wait for that announcement.
It's by extension that the local governments are broke.
Incidentally, it's not the first time this is happening in other parts of the world. In Nigeria, I mean, other parts of the world, it happens. In America, almost every year, some states go broke, some local governments go broke. Now, what are we hearing today? The governors want the federal government to intervene. They said it's not a very clear definition whether it's a bailout or they want the federal government to pay them what they owe them for financing federal government projects.
Because it looks as if initially they wanted bailout, because the statement from the Benue State government was that yes, that was the one published, that FG was going to assist or bail out. But now, having had all these meetings, they're digging up some other things, saying, look, you owe us in the first place. We've done jobs, projects that the federal government has not paid us. So perhaps they think if federal government pays them all those monies that they owe, plug those leakages and the excess crude, or pardon me, the crude oil thefts, they might find themselves on a good footing.
Yeah, very well, fine. But then, the question has to be asked, what is the federal government's capacity at the moment to pay those debts? That's
the question, because I do recall that shortly after election, I think it was the vice president-elect who was addressing, I can't remember who he was addressing now, but while speaking as Vice President-elect, he did say that the federal government had been borrowing to pay salaries as well. So if the states are broke, the federal government is also broke.
It's also broke.
Is there, what exactly are we looking at as a country?
I used those two words before, complicated uncertainty. Now, we have a legislative gap in Nigeria. Because if you want to look at the solutions to the problem, federal government's intervention can be in several facets. First, they could pay what they owe. It doesn't need a legislative intervention to the state governments. On the second side, if there is going to be a proper bailout, after paying what we owe you, and it's not enough, and you need us to bail you out. In the United States, their own public bankruptcy architecture, there is legislation by Congress to permit states to finance local governments and even appoint an emergency administrator to take over the administration of the local government.
Where the LGs are bankrupt.
Yeah, where they're bankrupt.
And they don't have a joint account.
Exactly. Detroit has just filed the highest municipal bankruptcy in American history, $18 billion, because of failed pension investments. Now, for the federal in America, too, can intervene at the state level. There's legislation for that. In Nigeria, there is a legislative gap. Now, technically, it's a state of financial emergency.
So who's going to be addressing the country?
Good. The Nigerian Constitution. Now, here's where lawyers will also come in to ask questions. The Nigerian Constitution says where there's an emergency in a state, appoint an administrator. But now, what is the definition of emergency? Does it extend to financial emergency? Because if the federal government is going to bail out states after paying them what they owe, that question comes up. Will they have to have their own administrator there to run their own finances? Because if they are not very confident, because a number of reports said the state governments, some of them, mismanage their public finances.
That's the other question now.
Good. So what's the guarantee that the federal government, after paying them their debts, now bail them out, they will not mismanage it? So does it imply, under the constitutional provisions of the emergency, that the federal government should appoint an administrator for those states?
And if they're to request this loan from the government, shouldn't they show some sort of plan? How do we intend to pay this if we're to borrow you or bail out?
Excellent point. Several solutions, again, as I mentioned, will need to be considered. One key one is having a multi-year budgeting plan. In Nigeria, we do practically single year, 12 months. Even though they have mid-year, mid-term plan, economic plan, but that's usually at the federal level. If you do that, you will put a rein on your public expenses because you're going to match expenditure and income over a number of years, maybe 3 years or 4. So it may actually make more sense. Now that we've just finished an election and there are new governors, many of them actually need to look into doing 4-year budgeting. And for the state assembly to pass a 4-year budget so that they will put a rein on their expenditure. That way you're more conscious, not just focusing on this year. Because there used to be a caricature made behind the camera when many Nigerians are socializing. They say state governments receive funds from the federal every 28 days. And the thinking at the state government levels is that, man, these funds have to finish before the next 28 days so that we get the next one. That's a beer parlor talk people say, but like we always say, it is when you joke about something, you get the seriousness out of it.
That speaks to fiscal indiscipline.
Public opinion, fiscal indiscipline. So if you do multi-year budgeting for 4 years, you're not going to be thinking, hey, these 28 days, let's finish this and let's go for the next 28 days funds. I don't bother myself.